Hello, everybody, and welcome back to an Epidose of this crazy guy who just eats meat and can't stop talking about it. Today, I am doing it solo, and today's topic is autism. So I haven't done a video on the subject for a couple of years now. I did a couple of them way back now. Seems like a long time ago. And this is probably one of the most underserved sort of niches in our community. So I wanted to make another video and keep the conversation going. So I'm 50 now, and when I was about 38, 39 years old, I was diagnosed with autism, and it was a shock to me. But at that point, um, there wasn't really much that the people who diagnosed me were going to do about it. So I don't know what I would expect them to do about it. Um, but I started my own journey of going out and meeting other adult autistic high functioning people, mostly, of course, because it's hard to find the lower functioning people, or at least ones that want to interact. So, and of course, I was more interested in people who are more like myself, like most of us are. So, well, after that point, which because that was over 10 years ago now, um, I started low carb, mostly because a friend was talking about it, and he had asked somebody who was doing really well, and they said, "Look, it's all about controlling insulin." So that was the starting point. So I went low carb, read a lot of books. I think I started with Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes, great book, and then moved on to keto. I was keto for I'm gonna guess it was like 8 or 9 months or something, and I drifted into carnivore just because it became abundantly clear to me that a lot of the plant fats didn't digest that well, and a lot of the plants in general, even things that seem innocuous like spinach and cauliflower and stuff like that. I realized I felt better when I didn't eat them, and I felt better when I ate more meat. And then that's about the time that Dr. Sean Baker showed up on Joe Rogan's show, and we started hearing about Dr. Jordan Peterson and, of course, Michaela Peterson. And then I discovered this whole world. Somewhere just before that, I just realized there was all these groups on Facebook, and there was the other websites out there, Zero Carb Zen and stuff like that. So when I realized, wow, there's lots of people that just eat meat, I was a lot more open to the idea of just trying it. Because one, it's counter to what we were raised to believe. So, I think in the beginning we all have to get over that. So, anyways, I did notice right away low carb helped. My worst symptom at the time that was plaguing me was arthritis, and I noticed it was getting better. Um, it was noticeably better in a few weeks. And so why I bring up arthritis is because, you know, arthritis is probably not related to autism, but things like anxiety are. So I noticed that anxiety decreased, but it's a more gradual thing than, say, arthritis was. So presumably joint inflammation getting better happens at a faster pace the than everything that goes into anxiety, right? 'Cause anxiety is probably quite a bit more complicated, but high levels of anxiety are very typical among people on the spectrum. Social anxiety is kind of its own category, but I noticed that was getting better for me. And of course, immediately I noticed digestion that got better really fast. Again, that got better on a pace faster than probably arthritis, and so much faster than the anxiety, but the anxiety did improve, and it continued to improve steadily. So I've been eating nothing but meat, or some caveats, do eat some dairy and stuff like that. So um and I can't tolerate a little bit of plant food or whatever. I could eat a lettuce wrapped hamburger doesn't bother me. Sliced tomato doesn't seem to bother me, or something like that. And I have eaten like hamburger with a bun occasionally. And I did notice that if I eat bread, I feel tired, pretty quick. So I don't make a regular practice of it, but every once in a while, particularly in certain social contexts, it just kind of makes sense. It's kind of the expedient thing to do if you want to get something to eat under certain circumstances. So, and I know for some people that's completely off the table. So their reaction to it would be quite a bit stronger. So they wouldn't do it. But I could tolerate a little bit here and there. It doesn't seem to be a big deal. Digestion issues. I mean, I lived as long as I could remember with heartburn or GERD or acid reflux, some combination thereof. And even in keto, it still hit me sometimes. And I know things like coconut oil or whatever, olive oil and stuff like that would cause that to come back. So naturally just going to meat and eating animal fat worked out great for me. So, and I do tend to not digest rendered fats as well as raw fats or lightly cooked fats. So I rarely eat like tallow or any lard or anything like that, or even duck fat anymore. But I used to, and I used to enjoy it. And then you start noticing all the abdominal discomfort, sort of mild discomfort from digesting food. When I just eat meat, there is no discomfort at all, ever, and then as well, you don't have gas anymore. It's like all these things I think are normalized to a large extent. I mean, heartburn, there's all kinds of heartburn medications, a lot of which, like your proton inhibitors, the proton pump inhibitors, which can actually be quite dangerous. And I think that's actually what killed my mother. So she was on it long term and she got pneumonia and it killed her. And you read right on the label, if you take those things long term, that your chances of getting pneumonia are very high. So anyways, people might want to rethink anything that gives them heartburn. Brain fog. I noticed that my mind was sharper all the time. So whatever it is, remembering things. A lot of people on the spectrum, they have not just one sort of disability or disorder, as it were. They frequently have other ones. And so it's no surprise that, I'm dyslexic. A lot of people on the spectrum are, certainly not all of them. But I noticed that I was able to remember things like phone numbers and stuff very well. Sometimes I would recall, complete phone numbers in order without even really trying to make a point to remember them, which was shocking because I'd never experienced that in my life. And I'm not saying the dyslexia is gone because it's still there and it's still problematic sometimes, but the level to which it affects me is much less. So I would say the same thing about the anxiety. It's not completely gone, but it's many magnitudes smaller than it was before. When you look back on your life and you realize I spent almost all of my life, I spent more than 40 years where anxiety basically influenced almost everything I said or did or thought or felt, so to see that decline and become less pervasive is tremendous. And then of course the digestion issues too. I mean, who wants to do anything when they got heartburn, so or just the minor inconvenience of things like having gas, or you got brain fog and you can't remember things, you're struggling to process things or whatever, that just adds to things like anxiety, I'm sure. So those are sort of the general things that were probably some of the most sort of debilitating things. But I was also quite heavy, and I'm not even sure what my max weight was, because your typical consumer grade or domestic scale didn't go up high enough to measure my weight. But north of 350 pounds, and been that way for quite a while, been well over 300 pounds for probably decades. So now I'm readily changing body composition. So before I had discovered all this, I went to the gym quite regularly. I liked lifting. I did the cardio because I thought I had to. And then the arthritis hit and I just couldn't work out anymore. I was miserable most of the time. And one of the things I noticed, I've said this many times before, but if I ate like an apple or banana or whatever, it would actually make my arthritis worse. It'd intensify the pain. And I was in this mindset that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's a healthy habit to eat an apple every day. And so I often ate one on the way to work. And then I realized that by the time I got to work, my joint pain was really bad. And lo and behold, when I stopped eating fruit, that cycle broke. It didn't necessarily make all the joint pain go away, but the fruit was clearly a trigger. So somewhere in there, I'd had a rash. In fact, I don't know if I ever told this on a video. The reason why I started wearing a beard is because I always had this rash on my chin, and it was diagnosed. I had it on the back of my hand too. It was diagnosed as not psoriasis, but I forget the term. But anyways, at some point in here with the arthritis, it started. I was taking a lot of things like naproxen or over the counter pain medication, and I eventually got not just little patches of white skin, but full blown psoriasis. Huge lesions would break out and erupt, and at the time I thought it was diet related. It clearly seemed to be triggered by things like naproxen. And I was going down the path of investigating leaky gut, which I probably did have. And a lot of those over the counter NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are notorious for causing leaky gut. So, but I'm going to do a completely separate video about psoriasis and leaky gut, and even mention the PKD diet and all that in there, because I do get a lot of questions about it. So as I went carnivore, I noticed that it was a step up for me from even keto. So I kept going. I even tried to go back. I thought, well, let me try keto again for 1 month for comparison, because why not, right? And I think I made it a week or so into that, maybe a week and a half, and then I was like, no, there's no comparison, and I went back to eating carnivore. And that was so it's 2021. It's August 2021 now, and that was about the end of 2017. So somewhere like November, December, probably maybe October. I don't know. So I don't write these things down. I'm always amazed when people know the exact day they started, because I don't. But that's just me. So and a lot of autistic people are really known for having meltdowns, and so my equivalent to a meltdown was probably more like, temperamental sort of eruption. And I noticed that they greatly subsided. It's basically gone. In fact, sometimes when I'm hanging out with some of my adult autistic friends, they comment on how zen-like I am now. So it's not just me, it's like a lot of other people notice it, so I'm not above arguing or something like that, but I don't flip out like I used to. So I used to really spend a lot more time just kind of in my own time and place, just sort of preoccupied with activities or experiences that were where I was very closed off, and I don't do that as much anymore. I also tolerate the sun much better. I do wear special sunglasses outdoors, and sometimes in offices, with a lot of bright fluorescent lights, because my eyes are still sensitive to light, but my skin doesn't seem to be. I really just don't. I don't go out and try and get sunburned, but I can tolerate quite a bit of sun now, where I used to physically feel ill. I remember one time I was out playing disc golf or trying to learn to play disc golf with a friend. And we were out in the morning. It was cool. It was a nice day. And I got that feeling. And this used to happen in the field too, because I worked for an engineering company for quite a while. And in the beginning, I used to help out with surveying when they were shorthanded. And standing in the sun would be sort of dysphoric after a while. Like it got really hard to think, and my mind got really cloudy, and it wasn't really temperature dependent. It was just dependent on sun exposure, right? And now I tolerate the sun quite well. I don't have that experience really at all. So outside of needing, dark glasses or something, um, I definitely tolerate. And I gotten quite a bit of sun certain days unexpectedly, and I didn't burn. So I get a little bit of pink, and then it just goes away within a few hours. So that's a nice thing. Um, a lot of people are arguing about how, high fat, high protein, organ meats and all that. And if you're looking to start this and wondering what's right for you, I don't think anybody knows. And even more complicated than that, I think over time, having been carnivore for over 3 years, for getting close to 4 years now, I can tell you that what works for you in the first year is probably going to change by the second year, if not the third year. And, there's some theories that we get more efficient with things. In the beginning, it seems like people tend to do better on high fat. They tend to heal faster on high fat. But then it seems like, especially if you're active like me, I couldn't wait to get back to the gym. And in the end, I realized I really just missed lifting. So I wanted to get into lifting. And I was probably close to 2 years or maybe more before I actually went back to the gym. I had a hard time getting myself to even, gyms tend to be busy places full of people, and I tend to avoid that. I'm not really completely averse to them, but it was hard for me to go, oh, I just got to go find one to sign up. And for me, I got to have a routine. I'm very routine driven. So I had to find something that fit my routine, and I kind of overthink everything, but I found it and it happened, and I went back. And of course, I like to lift. I like to lift big. Um, I'm into strength training. That's really my thing. I'm not really into bodybuilding, which is a little bit different, but I noticed my protein demand shot up quite quickly, much more so than my fat requirement, you'd think. Now, and I'm in a category where, well, a lot of people don't burn as many calories in a day as I do, because my caloric demand is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 calories a day. So managing that, because it varies so much, has some nuances to it as well. I don't really eat much in the way of organ meats. Occasionally eat some liver. I used to eat a lot more of it. I can't really tell the difference. I used to eat brains. They're kind of problematic to get. So, and I don't eat them now. I think the liver and the brains and the bone marrow helped with the healing more in the beginning. Maybe it's offsetting deficits in nutrients or something in the beginning, but now I mostly just eat steak. I will get some liver or liverwurst or Braunschweiger sometimes, because I really just like eating that. I do eat eggs now. I used to think that the eggs are part of the problem with the psoriasis, but now I've eliminated that. And I'll put that in another video because it's complicated. Um, I'm also, I used to get very preoccupied with subjects. Me and my friends call it rabbit holing. So like you get into a subject and you could do deep dives, and that's why a lot of autistic people have savant-like qualities, is because it can become super focused on on certain things. Of course, the brain is wired different too, and we're going to talk about more. Oh, I'm going to talk about more about that later. But I've been able to get less distracted by topics. And one of the great things about carnivore nutrition and science, everybody's been interacting with me for the last 3 or 4 years will tell you how I love scientific papers and love discussing them with people. So um, I've been able to focus on things like carnivore and nutrition and fitness and avoid a lot of the other subjects. I used to discuss politics heavily, among other things. A lot of you develop a lot of obscure interests. You don't find that many people interested in them. At least this, there's a community out there. There's always people to discuss carnivore with, or there's always somebody to discuss training with, or meal prep, or or cooking, as most people call it. So um, I've been able to sort of refine my focus in a way that wasn't really able to do before. So I can be very task oriented, and I'm much better at planning and figuring out what is going to be productive, as opposed to getting obsessed about a topic and then realizing later it's not going to do any good. It was, let's say, it was intellectually stimulating, but at the end of the day, it's not going to improve my quality of life, and my time would probably be better spent somewhere else. So um, for those of you who don't know, I have a Facebook group called Autistic Carnivores. Up to a year ago, I was very active in there. I was in there every day, and it was great. I felt like we were building a community. Uh, with everything in life changing with the lockdown and changing jobs and everything, I have not devoted the time to it that I wish I were devoting to it, but it is still there, and there's still a community there. There's well over 1,000 members there. It's open to autistic people, their families, their doctors, whoever's interested. It's not we don't have a bunch of rules and stuff. I'm not a big rules person. I'm not really into safe zones and trigger warnings and stuff like that. So it's not really that kind of, it's more about people sharing information, how they might transition, or maybe they've got an autistic member of the family who's a really picky eater, which is pretty much every autistic person I've met. So well, not everyone, but I'm actually not that picky of an eater, but a lot of people are. So how do you help those people transition, or at least try a low carb / carnivore meat-based diet? So there's discussions going like that. That's about the only coaching I do these days. I haven't really had time to be sort of a general carnivore coach, but and I don't advertise, I don't go after coaching because I have very limited time. So I kind of felt like I could be more productive and help more people by making these videos. That's why I've kept it going, given the limited amount of time that I have for stuff like this. So, but Autistic Carnivores on Facebook is there. There's lots of great people in there. It's a very easy group to belong to. We rarely have troublemakers. Everyone, it seems like once a year there's a troublemaker or whatever. Somebody new joins and causes a stink, but for the most part, it's pretty tranquil. There's quite a few regular contributors there that you'll recognize. So anyways, I've really enjoyed also being more social. When I first started making videos, I didn't even want to appear on camera. I had a friend or two, people I knew from social media were encouraging me to make a YouTube channel and share, put myself out there. And I didn't want to appear on camera. So if you look at my really old videos, they're basically slideshows that I narrate. There, I did book reviews and talked about different topics. Originally, I was going to call the channel the Ketogenic Fasting Project, because that's where I started. But by the time I started making videos, I was already carnivore, and I just stuck with the Ketogenic Fasting Project sort of label for a while, and then I just kind of dropped it because, of course, a lot of carnivore groups, they get mad if you post that in there. So I rebranded. I just went by my name for a while, and then after discussing this with my core cohorts, Emily and Joe and Justin and Raymond. You know, we kind of as a group picked the meat mosaic topic, and at some point I started labeling the videos meat mosaic. So anyways, if anybody's wondering why it is, I mean, part of that's the learning curve of someone like me learning social media, or you know, deciding to brand something in earnest, you know, all that minutia. So um since we're on the topic of autism, I'm going to branch out a little bit, because you know, I would like to, one of my goals is always to sort of elevate the discussion. I do, as I mentioned, love scientific papers and books. I like discussing books. I mostly consume audiobooks because I am dyslexic. So nobody in social media could miss the sort of tribal warfare always going on about vaccination and not vaccination, you know, vaccines and anti-vaxxers and so on and so forth. So I always recommend that people read two books. One is by J.B. Handley. um I was going to share that and I forgot to load it, but anyways, J.B. Handley's book talks about his experience with his child having an adverse reaction to the vaccine and the autism getting worse. And then there's Dr. Timothy Hotez, who's a virologist, and his book is called Vaccines Did Not Cause My Daughter Rachel's Autism. So he takes the opposite sort of posture on the topic. So, and I think those are two good counterpoints. And I think that we can all elevate the discussion here. And I'd like to say that my personal position is that the vaccines don't necessarily cause autism, but they do make the symptoms worse. And when you have a developing child, obviously you can cause a greater difference in the development, particularly of the brain, but perhaps even the gut biome or the digestive tract. So anyways, we have to all be considering the other science out there. A lot of us are probably aware of the study which showed that mothers with high A1C values were much more likely to give birth to autistic children. So it could be that blood glucose levels or something associated with high blood glucose, or even the damaged red blood cells, is part of the issue. And we know that from some studies that are emerging that autistic type brain formations are detectable in the womb, you know, with MRIs. So you're seeing some autistic development, you know, before the child's even born. And then in the case of the many thousands and thousands of people, in fact, you know, I have friends who have children who had, you know, adverse reactions to just flu vaccines who were never the same. So, you know, their vocabulary shrunk, their awareness sort of, or interaction with the outside world, their communication skills diminished and did not recover after their reaction to a vaccine. And I think it's important to remember that we're talking about, you know, a vaccine's job is to help the immune system recognize infections, right? So it is probably the immune system's reaction that's actually causing everything that we notice. And so it's not too far-fetched to say that, you know, perhaps that some of these vaccines need to be reviewed and need to be safer. And we also need to perhaps spread them out for some kids, and we need to understand who is going to react to them better. You know, in this time of the current situation with the Takati virus, one of the things people don't talk about is about the human immune system. In the immune system itself, a healthy immune system is going to trump a vaccination. It's going to trump all of the vaccinations. By that I mean, I know I said Trump, so everybody's going to get upset, but I'm going to say that the human immune system, if it's healthy and operating, is going to be more powerful than a vaccine, right? So a vaccine is sort of an artificial way of introducing a pathogen. So, and as we know, lots of people are exposed to uh, infections and they never really get sick. So that's because their immune system is working correctly, right? So I think it's incumbent on everyone to understand the immune system better, and particularly how they are different for autistic people. We know that a lot of the immune system um, is sort of connected to the digestive tract. There's a lot of processes that go on in the digestive tract that are part of the immune system. And of course, a lot of autistic people have digestive issues. So understanding that, I think will help us all have a better quality of life. And I think rather than arguing about whether vaccines are good or bad and sort of polarizing, we need to have a better understanding, because I think vaccines have their place. I think they save lives, but it's not as cut and dried as just saying, oh, well, a vaccine comes along and it's safe for everybody, because nothing is that simple, right? So instead of arguing about it and getting in fights, and let's elevate the discussion and see if we can, understand the immune system better, particularly for the people that are at greatest risk. And then let's think about finding, better ways to vaccinate people in the future and have a better understanding of who's going to have adverse reactions, so they don't have an adverse reaction. In the end, my goal has always been for people to have a better quality of life. And that is a major issue for a lot of people with autism. They, even high functioning autistic people oftentimes spend a lot of time alone. And I think it's a misnomer that autistic people don't want to be social. I know some high functioning adult autistics that do prefer to spend a lot of time alone. They're perfectly content. They like to go about their intellectual pursuits and hobbies and stuff like that. And they're perfectly happy not to be dealing with the outside world. The virus lockdown has let them do that and they're content. But I think largely most autistic people do want to have some social interaction. And I think it's a misnomer, just like lacking empathy is a major misnomer. Most autistic people do have empathy. They don't empathize with other people in the same way, So when I think people get on a better diet and they feel better, they have more brain power to devote to understanding and interpreting the outside world better. And I think they'll do better, and I think they'll have a better quality of life. It'll be easier for them to interact at will and socialize. I know it has been for me, and that's made a big difference. So I used to sort of, react to how people responded to things on social media. Now I take almost everything in stride. It doesn't really bother me when people disagree. And I'm sure the long knives and the pitchforks will come out with something I said, because it tends to happen anytime you get close to anything controversial. So and there's a good chance this video will just be demonetized or restricted or even taken down because I mentioned vaccine or whatever. So I'm sure there'll be like hey, get the facts from someone else sort of warning or something on here. But anyways, I just wanted to tell everybody that I continue to do better on carnivore. I basically eat steak every day. So if you want to check my Instagram, I tend to post pictures. Of course, people pick that apart because somebody was complaining, I don't eat enough fat, I'm going to get sick or whatever. So, that kind of stuff comes up. And, that's the other thing, I hope the carnivore community is not one that eats its own, like so many other communities. And I hope that people learn to understand that what works for one person, that exact formulation isn't going to work for everybody. and it's probably not going to work for them forever either. You're going to want to make adjustments. So whether it's the fat to protein ratio, so people feel better eating organ meats. People argue salt, no salt, salt's toxic. You need salt. There's salt diffs, it never ends. And really it comes down to the individual. And, oops, sorry. And if you're on any diet, it should be helping you meet your goals, right? If you want to go to the gym and lift, or you want to be in a physique contest or whatever, it should be helping you meet those goals, and your quality of life should be better every day. Whether that's you're alleviating your anxiety or your depression, whether you're sleeping better, whether you feel like being more social, whether you feel like getting out and walking the dog, or going to ballet class or yoga class or whatever it is. It should be helping you do that. Pay attention at work, get back to work. It should be doing that. And don't let people terrorize you and tell you, oh, you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. Because if you're not willing to experiment a little and consider the options, we're talking about how much salt you put on your food. Really, you should be able to experiment with that. Or assuming you don't suffer from, you're not salt sensitive, which most people aren't, or how much fat or protein, just figure it out. Just try high fat, low fat, or protein. If you're like me and you're a bigger person and you've got big muscles because you lift a lot of weight, you're probably going to have a high protein demand. And there are some people that that are very active, and they're professional athletes, or they're say strongman competition, marathon runner, ultra marathon runner. You may have caloric demands that you can't meet with just eating meat, fat. When I say meat, I mean protein and fat. To me, that's both. I know a lot of people get into the weeds and want to discern one or the other or whatever. And, some people are still prescribing weird varieties. You have to have this variety, or you got to eat nose to tail. And if you want to eat nose to tail and you feel good on it, go for it. But I don't see any overwhelming evidence that that's required much or necessary or whatever. I'm all for using as much of the animal as possible. But I don't see that there's any magic sort of composition of the animal from nose to tail that is true of all of them. And nobody eats the nose anyways, right? That's the running joke. I always ask these people to talk about eating nose to tail, which noses taste the best, and not one of them is eating a nose. And the closest thing to a nose, I've seen pig snouts. I've had a pickled pig snout before, but I mean, let's face it, nobody eats the nose. And I also have an oxtail. When do you ever see tails for, much less most of the animal in between? If you like organs, eat organs. If you take supplements, some organ supplement, and it helps you out, and the other thing is, if you don't assume you have a deficiency just because somebody says you might have a deficiency. Because I see people popping pills and spending a lot of money on stuff, and they really don't know if they have a deficiency or not. So if you suspect you have a deficiency, talk to an expert, get some tests or something like that. But don't just start spending your money and worrying about that stuff. A lot of us came to carnivore because we had health problems, and it's not going to be over. You're not going to heal everything overnight, because most people have multiple conditions. But as long as you know that you're getting better, sure, people hit plateaus, right? And it doesn't make you indestructible. Things can come along. You can get sick from this. You can have an accident, or maybe you need to adjust your diet a little bit. But, don't get too obsessed with one thing. Don't think that fasting is the be all end all. Don't think high fat is the be all end all. Don't think high protein is the be all end all. Don't think eating nose to tail is the be all end all. If it's working for you, it's working for you. If it's improving your quality of life and making you be healthy, then that's what counts. But don't assume it's going to stay that way forever, because I see things change for people. And we know from the early studies where they took professional athletes that are on a ketogenic diet, they'd been fat adapted for 2 years. And when they test them in the laboratory, they find out that there's still epigenetic alterations going on. So, just being fat adapted, which really just means you can tolerate eating a certain amount of fat in general. There's a lot that really goes into that, though. And if you think about it, you got cells in your body that live a day, and you got cells in your body that live for years. And a lot of those cells were born under less than ideal conditions because the diet was wrong. So as all those things change over, there's got to be this really complicated sort of adjustment that's going on. And I think that's why people continue to feel better the longer they're on the diet. And, I've been blessed to be able to talk to people like Dr. Lisa Wiedemann or Mark Wimmer. They've been carnivore for over 10 years, and when they started, they didn't have all this stuff to worry about. Nobody was saying you had to eat nose to tail. Nobody was all that worried about how much salt you put on your food or what your fat to protein ratio was. And they all did fine. They're still doing fine. You can still find them on, Mark Wimmer doesn't do a lot of social media, but he's out there, and I did an interview with him, and I'd be happy to do another one. But there's lots of other people, Kelly Hogan and, well, either Charles Washington. He doesn't do a lot of social media either, but there's a lot of people from that era out there on social media. So and they do, even guys like Charles Washington occasionally does a interview. So anyways, before all this hype about one thing being better than another, people were doing it in a very plain way. Eat the meat you feel compelled to eat. Find the cut that satisfies you, the one you look forward to eating again. That's sort of simple. Eat meat and drink water, and make those little adjustments, but don't overthink it. Feel your way through it, and you should be fine. So that has worked for me. And my diet has changed. I mostly eat like New York strips now. It's pretty lean. And when I do burn a lot of calories, I do supplement with some extra fat at the end, but I don't do OMAD. I don't do well on OMAD. I don't know if I was talking to Brian Cruz. He's a trainer of Canada, and it sounded like he could put down some pretty big meals. And I don't think he was a particularly big person. I didn't ask him how tall he was or how much he weighed or anything, but he can sometimes eat some huge meals. And we've all seen Sean Baker do videos where he's eating like 3 or 4 steaks at a time. And, Justin, I told everybody, Justin will tell you, he can eat a lot at one time. I can't eat that much at one time. So I break my meals up, and there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. I think when you're weightlifting, particularly people like me that are weightlift, I usually am lifting 5 to 6 days a week. I've got to eat multiple times a day. That's all there is to it. At least 3, sometimes 4. And sometimes I find myself, I'm getting to the gym. I usually go to the gym after work, after I've been sitting in traffic for an hour. And sometimes I literally go to the supermarket next door, and buy raw meat and eat it before I work out because I'm hungry, or I find something fatty to eat because I could tell I'm going to need more to get through, or this is not so much getting through the workout, is having a great workout. You want to be in that place where you know what to eat, and you're eating to work out, not working out so you can eat, right? And when you do it for a while, you'll feel that, you'll understand that whatever it is you want to do, whether it's, some sort of mental exercise or physical exercise or just getting through the day, you will eventually figure out what cuts of meats satisfy you, sustain you, improve you, help you rebuild, and so on and so forth. Look at protein like something that your body rebuilds with, and look at the fat as fuel. That's the simplest way to look at it. You can convert protein into energy, and your body probably is converting a little, especially if you have plenty. But for the most part, it's a lot of work. It's more work for your body to do that than it is to just burn the fat. So in its simplest form, keep that in mind. So anyways, I hope the autistic community out there keeps building, and you meet some of the people we've seen, people, not necessarily autistic people, who have talked about it, but I've done interviews with people who had severe OCD that went away on, when they went meat based or keto. The anxiety is one I talk about a lot because that's what I experienced. But there's a number of people who describe the depression getting better as well. And then a lot of people on the spectrum find themselves stimming a lot less, myself included. I tend to get that type of anxiety that encourages me to stim, particularly in public. So I noticed it a lot less. For sure. I get a certain level of anxiety at night too when it's getting time to go to bed for some reason, and that's when I was likely to do it. And then I can go quite a while without an episode, where it used to be basically every day. It was just normal. I didn't even know what it was most of my life. So anyways, a lot of people report that them or their family member that they're helping, their quality of life increases, digestion issues go away, they're calmer, they're stimming less, they're in a better mood. And I think that frees up people's ability to communicate. And a lot of autistic people have trouble communicating on all kinds of levels. Some don't speak at all. A lot don't speak at all. And when they have more of their faculties to contribute to communicating, they seem to communicate more. So that seems to be the thing. They're able to interact with other people more because they are less preoccupied with other things, like, their stomach hurting or their anxiety being through the roof, or, I used to, one of the symptoms I had for my whole life was that I would jump when there was a lot of noise or somebody would walk up and I didn't know they're there. I jump really hard, and it wasn't particularly debilitating for me because I get over it very quickly. But I jumped so hard that I scared the other person. It used to be a running joke at my old job. My boss would walk in, I didn't realize she's there, and she'd say something. I'd jump, and then she would jump, and she'd jump harder, and she'd have to stop and catch her breath. And I noticed that gradually got better as well. So whatever it is that triggers that, um, it seems to, I seem to get triggered a lot less. So I don't know. There's no easy way to explain it, because it's sort of a reaction before there's any awareness of it. So it's that brain circuitry that's sort of outside and faster than consciousness, or awareness, let's say. It's that whatever sort of primal mechanism in me got triggered very easily. So even my neighbors knew that. Like, they're like, they'd make sure I knew they were coming. I spent a lot of time out in the garage tinkering, and if they can't come over to visit, they would like shuffle their feet or say hello from a distance, or they'd say, "Hey, is Tom home? I see the garage open," and they knew to do all that. They just picked up on it. But a lot of that all took place long before I was diagnosed with autism. So my sensitivity to noise is a lot better. I still sleep with earplugs in. It made a huge difference. I'm sleeping with a chili pad now, which I really enjoy. Um, keeps my back cool, and I'm laying on the mattress, which seems to help me sleep better. Um, I try and wear a manta mask a lot of time, but it doesn't stay on usually because I move around a lot. But I got blackout curtains and everything. So anyways, getting a good night's sleep help. I noticed when I went carnivore, I slept a lot deeper for longer periods of time. I still am not a good sleeper. I still basically have a sleeping disorder where it can be really hard for me to go to sleep initially. I do use melatonin to try and reset um, my time to go to sleep. and stuff like that. And I do wake up sometimes, but I track all that stuff now, and I know it's quite clear that I spend more time asleep than I did before, and I feel a lot better when I wake up. That's the big thing, right? So, anyways, I hope to meet some more of you people. If you're on Facebook, join Autistic Carnivores. If you're just on Instagram or something, like, hit me up, Thomas Allen Clark, or look for Meat Mosaic. We have a Meat Mosaic account there too, which usually like Joe and Emily are posting in, and I really should post more in. Apologies. But I wanted to encourage people out there, if you're on the spectrum, give carnivore a try, see what it does for you. Let us know. I'd like to hear your results. And, I should say this at the beginning. If you could subscribe to the channel, definitely leave comments. Let us know how carnivore has been for you. Let us know if there's something you'd like help with. And if you know anybody who might enjoy this video or benefit from it, please pass it on to them. But until next time, eat some meat, feel better, and whatever you do, don't fall down that carb hole.